a noted person with a reasonable history, but this is a very slanted opinion article. He's basically decrying Trump, Trump's position as a deal maker, basically, with a focus on Ukraine and Israel and Gaza, and saying that Russia, because Trump hasn't been able to get long-lasting peaceful outcomes in those two zones, he is a failed deal maker. Yet the entire article does not even breathe a word of Trump's involvement with the India-Pakistan um, flare-up, with what took place with Iran, with the Armenian peace agreement, with what's happening in the Congo. There's many successes that Trump has had in terms of securing peace or securing a more peaceful outcome as more substantive outcomes are being followed. Yet they're completely missing from this article. And the article focuses just on the two that, admittedly, he was very vocal about desiring peaceful outcomes from both of them. And they're not coming out because, well, the belligerents aren't committing to a peace, really. I mean, yes, the Israeli strikes in Qatar, not so much Yemen, were kind of the last. I think it burnt through the last of the goodwill Israel had from Iran, from subduing Iran. The the other Gulf nations and I guess other nations from the Middle East and probably broader are like, well, nope, you've burnt through all the goodwill. Uh, and I mean, people just see it as Israel doing whatever Israel wants whenever it wants, and therefore, why trust them when there's efforts to secure peace in Gaza and that sort of stuff? Also, there is the hardline response from Hamas. I mean, there's a reason why. There are, well, many reasons, but there's a reason why peace between Hamas and Israel has eluded everybody up to this point. And yes, the continued attempts to take out the head of Hamas and things like that don't help. And it's not the first time Israel has struck at the Hamas leadership uh, in the Gulf states. They'd sent a Mossad team into a hotel in the UAE, I believe it was the UAE, captured on CCTV, that took out Hamas leaders a number of years ago. And I was talking to people yesterday about the strikes in Qatar. They had a very um, big similarity to the sort of strikes the Rhodesians were trying against Mugabe when he was head of ZANU, when ZANU was engaged in rebellion to try and force decolonization of Rhodesia. And so they'd be safely ensconced in Mozambique and other places and come across the border into Rhodesia and conduct their attacks and then go back across the border. The Rhodesians occasionally launched precision attacks into the safe areas, the safe cities where the leaders were holed up, and uh, almost all of them failed to take out the leadership. The Rhodesians at the time suspected that it was the British Foreign Office leaking that the raids were about to be undertaken to Mugabe and cohort and allowed them to basically get out of the way. And well, because the British were basically informed of all the Rhodesian attacks and operations and things like that. And they were also in communication, relatively open communication with Mugabe and ZANU and whatnot. And so, yep, the fact that every time the Rhodesians went into what they believed was very good intel about the location of Mugabe and whatnot, and they weren't there, that the operation had been leaked. And the only place it could have really come from was the British Foreign Office. And, well, that it it was further evidence that the British did not support what the Rhodesian position was, despite what they might have said on the outside. The attacks against Qatar follow a relatively similar path, that the significant heads of Hamas are known to be living or in a certain site and are seemingly protected there in another nation, and that when Israel went, right, we're going to take them out, but we've got to tell the US and Qatar and presumably maybe one or two other nations along the way that they're going to come and do this strike, that at some point that information filtered down and was leaked to the Hamas targets, who conveniently were all absent when the bombs fell and left behind lower level functionaries, etc. And so that's the sort of thing that, like I said, it has these very strong similarities to that sort of stuff in the past. And people just go, wow, they were unlucky to have missed, or they were lucky that they missed, depending on who you support. But in terms of conduct of an operation, it looks like the fact it was being undertaken was leaked and potentially on purpose. But see, that's also another sign that the Israelis have eroded their goodwill, because people feel justified in leaking that sort of stuff. It's things aren't black and white. A lot of greys there, and uh, I don't know whether loyalties were shifting, but well, it seems it's done more to destabilize things than to continue. But the whole point of this article, though, is that because Trump has been unable to, well, rein in Israel based on this person's opinions and stance on things, and been unable to, well, I guess, rein in Russia because, again, of their personal position, that, yeah, again, targeted rhetoric that completely misses the um, completely misses the successes that have happened. And if you were just to read the article, I mean, and the comments that did follow were quite terrible, that's what you'd believe. And you wouldn't see or hear analysis or thought or facts that didn't match up with it. And so you walk away from it having an ideology hammered into your head that you may or may not agree with. And, I mean, making all sorts of insane claims about what did or didn't happen and what the intent of leaders are when, well, they've said other things, or again, the reason I don't read these